Okay, so this is the plenary session from the breakout sessions that you've just had. I'm delighted to announce that Greg Clark has arrived and he's sitting here at the front, and the Mayor of Tees Valley, Ben Houchin, so thank you. And I think it's very pertinent that you're in this session as well. So, again, Tina is going to time me, but the first session that we're going to focus on was clean energy and the circular economy, and I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Rhian-Mari Thomas from Barclays. So, Rhian, can you just begin by giving me an overview of how that discussion just evolved, please?
Of course. Does this work? No. Better? Hopefully. Lights on, gnome tone. Otherwise, I'll just shout. Is that any better?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jane. 30 minutes flew by. We had a pretty lively conversation. I think most people in the room contributed. Just a few words, clean energy and the circular economy. We had a fantastic presentation from John at Engie this morning about clean energy, so won't dwell on that. But circular economy, for anyone in the room who's maybe scratching their heads on that, that's really that concept of, in particular, using renewable resources, reusing, and as was raised in the room, the concept of using the byproducts of one industry as the feedstock for another. And the point was made that the heritage of industry in this region in particular lends itself very well to a number of industries and a number of businesses fully understanding that concept. So on the whole, I think the feeling was, it was very positive. However, one of the points that was made by a number of participants was a lack of networking and linkage within the region, as well as the region presents itself. So examples were given of when we try and go for proposals for contracts that come internationally, seeing other regions, particularly I think somebody mentioned an Antwerp consortium that managed to pull together the whole breadth of their offering in a way that we sometimes struggle to do. And there was we talked about that, and there were some practical solutions that were proposed about, I think it was NEPIC and a few other bodies where, you know, the onus is on us as business leaders to try and make sure that we found those right forums to share ideas, share technology. The other point that linkage was made was between data and between digitization and energy. We had a number of energy professionals in the room, and the question was asked, how well do you feel that you're linking up with the latest technology around blockchain, digitization, artificial intelligence? And there was a consensus that really isn't being done as well as it could. So another area of us thinking, how could we do that better? Graham Hillier from the CPI made a number of points, I think, here that I thought were great around the way the big plants here are well automated, and so we do have examples of where we've been using sensors and we've been using automation. And I don't know, Jane, am I allowed just to ask Graham to say just a couple of words on that? Because I think it was an important point in looking at the region and the skills that we've inherited in the region from business we have.
My point here was that in clean energy and in circular economy, we're actually distinctive. We can easily be better than everybody else because we have a very strong heritage in thinking about the world that way, and we've got good universities, good innovation, well, fantastic innovation centres. I'm bound to say that because I work for one. Great companies, fantastic land. We have two very good labs, and actually trying to make them work together is quite a challenge sometimes. Sorry, Ben. But in the Tees Valley, we have some kind of autonomy as well, so that we can do something that lifts ourselves up. And our glass is more than half full, but we tend to think of it as half empty most of the time.
That's a great point. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jane, for letting us do that. Another point that was made was about the strength of the clean energy industry here in the northeast. The point was made by one of the developing agency who was talking about the number of business proposals that have come across their desk, and of the 12 that have been taken forward, of the 100 or so that have been put forward, 9 of those were around clean energy and the circular economy, and particularly looking at recycling in the manufacturing sector, and which led on to a point about the importance of cheap energy. And the ability, a number of these sort of recycling, especially recycling of waste products, require they're very energy intensive in their manufacturing processes, and therefore access to cheap energy is very much an analogy to the access to cheap broadband, which was a discussion maybe a decade ago in trying to attract digital and technology businesses to a region. And so I think that was the point that was made, and again a point that led to very positive agreement in the room that the clean energy industry in the region is very well positioned, and I've actually written here, we're brilliantly good at providing. So I think with that, Jane, I think we're going to run out of time. Thank you very much to everybody who contributed to that discussion this morning. 30 minutes certainly wasn't long enough for what is a huge topic, and one that definitely presents business with a huge competitive opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Rhian. What I'm very keen to do, and what made very clear with Prosperity UK at the start of the discussions about this conference, is that we had some actions coming out of these discussions. So of those of you who are in the room, I'm very struck by that comment around lack of networking, lack of linkage. Is there anyone here who would put their hand up to be a champion for that, so we can talk to that person to take that conversation forward, please?
Go on then, I'll have to do it.
Thank you for that volunteering that.
Yeah,
That's
enthusiastic volunteering.
Can I do that classic thing of someone who's about to go back to London and say Barclays would love to be one of the main conveners in the area as well? So looking at Julian here, who gave us the intro this morning, we would be delighted to be involved with you, Graham.
Okay, thank you. Very important points came out of that. Thank you very much, Rhian.
Thank you, Jane.
Okay, can I invite up the next representative, Dominic Lusardi? Thank you. Okay, Dominic. So, looking through the digital lens now.
Yes.
The questions that we posed you around the potential, the challenges, and how do we build our reputation, and I appreciate the conversation may have flown from that, but again, can you give the audience a synopsis of what came out of that discussion?
Yes,
Please.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay? I'll better on the microphone. I'll use my voice, Yorkshire voice. So there were kind of 4 distinct points that came out of our discussions, and ours were very similar. We probably could fill 2 hours and still not got through the full conversation. We did a bit of a straw poll in the room just to understand digital, who was looking to use digital, and who was there for knowledge, and it was around about 40-40-20 split. The first thing that we kind of spoke about was the sector, the area, how is it growing, and one of the challenges that was first discussed was actually around infrastructure space. The challenges that we've all spoke about, whereas we have a growing sector that had a great degree of support previously, but that has now not continued in the way that the businesses have grown, and that creates challenges in the area as far as where do we go with growth. You know, are we creating a rod for our own back by actually sending businesses out of the area by not having the provisions available for them? That was one key point. That led on to networking, exact same issue that was just discussed in the previous session. Predominantly everybody was saying that they weren't aware of all the different digital companies that are here, and what's more importantly is the companies that are going to use the digital services and use the digital companies are totally unaware of what they can do, and there isn't a focus on the northeast. They're always looking elsewhere in the country for those services. They're probably not even sure that they're there.
Yeah.
So a stronger collaboration network, stronger visibility of the skills that we have here in the northeast was a key point. That then led on to board engagement. How do we engage with large businesses at a senior level to get them to take digital strategy forward, rather than it being the IT guy and the marketing person? You know, it's sub-board level. How can we actually build this up to be at board level so people are actually understanding the decisions that they can make and how they can impact the entire business? Digital, as was agreed, runs across the entire business. It's not just one element of the business.
And did you have some solutions to that?
Around the networking. That's very much around the networking, creating this collaborative network, looking at the collaborative networks and looking for the overlap between the networks as well. Predominantly everybody was speaking about the fact that, yes, we have the networks, but they're all siloed and don't cross over, and that's digital networks, but also other networks, process industry networks. How do we engage better so that digital is seen actually as part of all of them, not just on its own in isolation?
Okay.
We then discussed skills and employment. How we're all saying that actually the challenge we have is not actually finding people with the right skills, it's finding the right approach to the business. And if we're in a position now where we're saying actually we're struggling to bring people in, where is the process that we are doing to bring people in that are non-digital natives into digital businesses, and how we can upskill them? It was very much, we all spoke about how it's a personality match as much as it is a skills match, and so taking people from other industries into digital, explaining that they can actually have an effect within that digital sector and that their knowledge is just as valid as a digital native.
Okay. Any other points?
Those are our 4 biggest key points.
Okay, thank you. Obviously a burgeoning sector in this region and very important, but again we take those strategic discussions forward, so I'm going to ask, is there anybody again from that group that wants to put their hand up, or is it you, Dominic, in terms of championing this? Obviously the university has a key role and interest and investment in this as well, but
Absolutely.
we have to get that continuity in those conversations joined up. I completely agree. So again,
Completely agree. Yeah.
Okay,
and
so
I'm happy to put
there we
myself
go.
forward.
We've got it on film as well. Thank you very much,
you.
Dominic. Okay, we're quickly moving on to advanced manufacturing. So welcome back, John.
Thank you.
Toal. So again, 3 questions. Can you again, as the other 2 colleagues have done, just summarise the key issues that came out for you?
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for a lively discussion. What started off a bit slow, we got to become quite contentious in the end. So I have 5 themes here. One is about this visibility of our capabilities in the region. There was a massive feeling in the room that we are very, very good at manufacturing here, but it's not very coordinated in terms of its presentation to the outside world. I know that's kind of a common theme, but it's probably time to do something about it now.
Yep. Yep.
Which led on to then something around the investment community, that when manufacturing organisations, there was slight contention here, but we've certainly felt it, is that I can go to a PE house and get easy investment for a digital business or an IT business. But I take a manufacturing company there, they're slightly more reluctant for some reason. They don't quite get what manufacturing is about. So there's a job of work there. We need to build a story about why they should be investing in manufacturing businesses, which then transformed into something particularly around automotive, where we have some experience of it in dealing with automotive companies and how incredibly generous they are to their 2nd and 3rd tier suppliers. That some form of support from the large organisations in the region and nationally from those tier 1s for our investment in our business should be encouraged.
Yep.
As they receive investment maybe from the government. Maybe part in terms of that is that they help the downstream and they don't give us 75 and 90-day payment terms and that kind of stuff. Will be kind of helpful. We then reverted back to the high kind of whole visibility of manufacturing from a kind of attracting people and showing off bit, but also from a people perspective. And we looked at one example where a campaign had gone out on the BBC about how great we were up here at manufacturing things, and not just showing off a steelworks, but actually showing proper, exciting manufacturing. But actually, for our target audience, they don't watch the BBC. They're on social media. So when we're looking at promoting what we're doing, let's make sure we're using classic digital marketing techniques that you and I know about really well to get to the right level of audience, to show that manufacturing is a good place for young people to come to, is exciting. And also a kind of subset of that was for the universities to help us attract grads into the SMEs, because working for an SME again is not seen as particularly attractive. So there's some encouragement there that rather than going to work for large organisations, so that we promote the joys of working for an SME out there as well.
Thank you.
So those are the key themes, really.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And again, I'm going to ask for a spokesperson to take that conversation forward, because what we're getting is the sectoral analysis comes through. this coordination, this visibility of our capabilities. And again, I'm struck by when Lord Heseltine came to visit the region after the SSI closure, and we were in a room at Combined Authority headquarters, and he said, can you all stop whinging about what you haven't got and start talking at what you have got? And that was nearly 3 years ago, and it is about time we actually started coming together as a leadership group and doing something about that. So, John, is that you?
I'm debate that off. I'm kind of busy with getting into Tharsus at the moment, so I may not.
Well, we can all claim a very busy job, but for now we'll put you down as acting in that role. I think I build from the colleagues in the room.
I'm a salesman. I think I got closed there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but by no means least, Steve Bagshaw, CEO of FUJIFILM, Diosynth Biotechnologies, and you were facilitating the Biosciences group. So again, can you give us all a summary of those discussions?
Well, first of all, a huge thank you to the group that came. And I have to say, we went around the table, did the introductions, but then also went around the table talking about what the region has. And if you look at the last 3 years and look at how much investment and announcements there have been about national centres in the northeast of England, wow, we went around the table talking about it. But of course, as someone said, oh, don't forget the ageing centre in Newcastle, you know, half the room went, oh yeah, the ageing centre in Newcastle. And then you'd say, well, what, don't forget about the National Biologics Manufacturing Centre in Darlington. Oh yeah, national. And you know, as we went around that room, you could see that there was not, even in that group of us who were bioscience, we put our hands up to talk about biosciences, we weren't all connected with what even the national announcements that have been made, which are fabulous news, prioritising the northeast of England to be the place where this is happening. We couldn't tell that story as we were sat there.
Okay.
So real issue number one, those were things that were live and direct. The other issue was, of course, how do you link ageing with biologics manufacturing, with fuel, with and you just go around the table and go, how do you link these bioscience pieces together? Because it's not obvious as you start how you'd even explain to somebody what this was. And there were one or two people sat in the room who were looking from the outside of us as a sector, saying, you guys can't even tell the story yourselves that you've come together to tell. Surely any sector has a strategy. Surely any sector puts all this together and actually promotes a way forward and says this is a distinctive difference that we have to somewhere else. We then talked about the fact the UK needs to get that story straight too, and as Greg knows, I've been co-chairing the bioeconomy strategy board for the UK, and that's been a struggle getting the bioeconomy story together for the UK. Get that story straight and get the Northeast story straight is a challenge for us, and so we talked about that. But I would like to say that that group was really positive about what we've got in the Northeast, what we've already invested in, and the opportunity of linking it together. But it was a case of linking it together, telling the story. Someone talked about a biosciences czar for the Northeast, or some type of thing where you basically create role that actually leads across the LEPs and across all the sort of segments and sectors that means. And think of it again, if you don't remember anything about bioscience and you came here going, oh, bioscience, what's that? Think about feed, heal and fuel, because those three things are all connected through bio. And we think that we've got a real act to play in the Northeast in that area. Building our reputation and the challenges, really the challenges are, as we've talked about, how do you get that story out? We talked about, and it was really interesting, Valdi, you were quoted as being, because of the way you talked about the use of communication. And how you need to use multimedia ways of communicating. Because there is a group of people that will be influenced by using social media. Let me tell you now, my mother-in-law isn't influenced at all by social media. She doesn't even know what it is, yet she has one vote, the same as everybody else. And we have to remember that there are people in this country who aren't influenced by that approach and do watch the BBC. And we must keep both the BBC, the social media, the ways in which we network together, because they are really important together. Building our reputation then is getting the Northeast story out, and we need to do that. And I know what the next question is going to be.
You don't actually? Because because actually what I'm just reflecting on is you could be the czar of all of these different languages that we need to focus on.
Have you ever translated Tsar into Japanese?
Okay, thank you, Steve. But before you run off, so it's very obvious what the common theme is that's coming through here this morning. I had a meeting with colleagues yesterday around building an ecosystem in this region, and the communication piece is based on Dan Eisenberg's research in MIT in Boston, talks about the need for communication, clear, consistent communication, where we talk up and we present the role models and those that are succeeding and we're not ashamed of that as well. So Steve, I'm assuming that you will be involved in this discussion, but again it's very easy, as I had loads of nods of the heads when I said it's about time we started talking up, and actually this needs to be business led. The voice of business has to drive this, and everything else then has to come into the slipstream of that. So I have just appointed you as that role and potentially the overall czar of that, but thank you very much for sharing the feedback from that session. Thank you, Steve.